When I read the email chain between my daughter and her husband, I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just closed the laptop, folded the retirement home brochure they'd left, accidentally, on my kitchen table, and got up to cancel the $250,000 I'd wired to their business loan. Because if they thought they could toss me into a care facility and steal my money, they hadn't met true me. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I always knew my daughter married up, at least in her mind. When Rebecca brought Troy home for the first time, she introduced him like he was an imported luxury, all smiles, slick words, and the kind of handshake that squeezed just hard enough to feel performative. I didn't dislike him, not at first. But I'd spent enough years in the army, and even more managing union crews on industrial sites, to know the smell of a man who sold promises instead of building things. Still, I kept my mouth shut. Rebecca had always been headstrong. Brilliant, too. First in her class at Chapel Hill. Business school after that. Marketing executive by 32. She could talk anyone into anything, including herself. After her mother died, I raised her alone. There were rough years. Her teenage rebellion burned hotter than most. But she never got into real trouble. I was proud of the woman she became, poised, polished, respected. What I never saw coming was how easily her pride would become something sharper. Something that could cut through blood and memory like they were just obstacles to her next promotion. The first time she hinted at being embarrassed by me, we were at a company barbecue Troy's startup hosted. Everyone else arrived in sleek black SUVs. I came in my '94 Ford pickup, the one I rebuilt with my own hands and still trust more than any German computer on wheels. You couldn't have taken the Camry? She asked in a whisper, her smile fixed while her eyes flashed. I let it slide. Just like I let it slide when Troy started calling me, sir, with a smirk. Just like I let it slide when Rebecca pushed my hand off her shoulder in front of her new boss during that same event. Just trying not to look too much like a daddy's girl, she joked, as if that was some terrible thing. It wasn't always like that. When she was little, she used to fall asleep with her cheek pressed to my chest while I read to her. Every story ended with her whispering, "Don't let anything happen to us, okay, Daddy?" And I'd swear it, every night, because I meant it. Even after Troy came into the picture, I kept my promise. I co-signed their first mortgage. Paid off half of it 3 years later when the interest ballooned. When their business struggled in year 2, I gave them a $40,000 infusion, just to help keep things moving. That was Rebecca's phrase. She always made things sound temporary. They bought a bigger house last spring. 5 bedrooms. Gated community. Not the kind of place where a retired man with oil-stained boots fits in, but I helped them build it all the same. And then there was Emily. My granddaughter is the one shining thing that never changed. 11 years old, with eyes like her mother's and the stubborn heart of a prizefighter. She calls me Gramps and writes me letters every week on pink stationery. We fish in the pond behind my house. We bake cookies from scratch, even though neither of us is particularly good at it. Last Christmas, she gave me a coupon book titled Gramps Only Treats, with promises like 1 hour of no interruptions, a whole day without phone screens, and a hug anytime you want. That book lives in the drawer next to my bed, alongside my wife's wedding ring and a pack of chewing gum I'll never finish. To Emily, I was still a hero. Still the man who could fix broken shelves, bandage scraped knees, and tell ghost stories that made her giggle until she couldn't breathe. She didn't care that my jacket smelled like diesel or that my hands were too rough for glassware. But her parents did. Over the years, they stopped inviting me to things without including dress code reminders. My Thanksgiving seat moved farther from the center of the table. Eventually, I was being invited for the morning part of holidays, brunch instead of dinner, setup instead of celebration. You don't mind, do you? Rebecca would say. We just want to keep it efficient. Efficient. Like I was a part of their schedule, not their family. Still, I showed up. Every time. Because that's what fathers do. They show up, even when it hurts. One Saturday in early October, they invited me over for a family strategy session after brunch. Troy said it with that little self-satisfied chuckle of his, like he'd invented the phrase. Just want to brainstorm how we can all align better going forward, he added. Maximize legacy, right? I nodded, hiding the discomfort crawling up my spine. I'd spent 40 years planning logistics, organizing teams, and balancing multi-million-dollar operations. The last thing I needed was a son-in-law with a podcast telling me how to align family dynamics. They brought out a whiteboard and started drawing timelines. I thought maybe they wanted to talk about Emily's college fund, or updating the will. I never expected what came next. But that didn't happen just yet. That weekend, we were all still smiling. Still pretending. Still clinking our glasses of non-alcoholic cider and toasting the Delaney legacy. Emily sat in my lap while Troy explained his new pitch deck to Rebecca. She nodded, eyes glossy with ambition. I should have known. But it would take one more visit, and one forgotten device, to show me exactly how far gone they were. The rain had started just after dusk, soft at first, like the sky wasn't sure it wanted to cry. I was sitting at the kitchen table, thumbing through an old photo album Rebecca had made me for Father's Day, back when she still believed in glue sticks and construction paper. Each page was a timeline in itself, her riding a tricycle in the driveway, missing both front teeth, her graduation from Chapel Hill, my arm around her shoulder like I was holding the moon. I didn't hear the knock at first. The dog barked once, low, uncertain. When I opened the door, Emily rushed in like sunshine after fog. Surprise sleepover, she declared, thrusting a duffel bag into my chest. Rebecca stood a few feet behind her on the porch, arms crossed. She wore that tailored trench coat she always favored in the fall, expensive fabric, lifeless color. Can she stay here tonight? She asked. Troy's parents are flying in tomorrow and we're completely overloaded. Just need the house quiet. She didn't wait for an answer, just kissed Emily on the crown and turned back toward her Mercedes. Love you, sweetie, she called, waving one hand, already opening the driver's door. I stared after her, the smell of her perfume lingering like guilt. She hadn't looked me in the eye once. That night, Emily fell asleep on the couch halfway through the Iron Giant. I carried her to the guest room, tucked her in with one of Martha's old quilts, the red and white one with the uneven stitches. I lingered in the doorway a while. The way she curled under the covers reminded me of her mother at that age, afraid of thunderstorms, sleeping with one hand wrapped around my pinky. I padded back into the kitchen. That's when I saw it. The iPad. She'd left it charging by the fruit bowl, Rebecca's old one. Emily used it to play games and draw cartoons. But it had pinged, lighting up the dark with a soft glow. One new email. I shouldn't have looked. I really shouldn't have looked. But the subject line caught me in the gut, final docs for Rosepine transfer, review and sign before Friday. I tapped. It was an open email chain between Rebecca, Troy, and a lawyer named Calvin R. DeWitt. Attached were PDFs titled Capacity Evaluation Criteria, Conservatorship Petition Draft, and Residential Transfer Strategy. My hand froze mid-air, hovering above the screen like it might burn me. My pulse thudded in my ears. The messages were polite. Clinical. Like I was a project they were managing. Troy had written. We'll initiate the POA revocation when his cognitive status hits baseline confusion. If he pushes back, we'll cite safety concerns. Rebecca replied. Dad won't fight it. He never fights anything. He's tired. He'll accept it quietly, especially if Emily's not around that weekend. Also, confirm the wire from the business loan has cleared. We'll need the funds before we sign on the Boulder property. I kept reading. There were references to my name on property deeds. My checking account. The equity from my home. Mentions of final harvest timing and asset reclamation. I scrolled until I couldn't breathe. A full psychiatric evaluation had already been scheduled in my name. They were going to claim diminished capacity. Use my quietness, my solitude, as evidence that I wasn't stable. Then, they would move me into a retirement facility named Rosepine Estates, and claim the rest. The final nail came from Rebecca herself, 3 emails up. A sentence so offhand it nearly knocked me from the chair. It'll be easier when he's not underfoot. Troy and I deserve this. We've earned it. That word hung in my skull like a bell toll. Earned. I stood slowly, backing away from the tablet like it was radioactive. The kitchen spun, cold and fluorescent. The linoleum felt too slick under my socks. I sat down hard at the table. My chest ached, not like the heart attack from 15 years ago, but something meaner. A slow poison, dripping deep inside. I had sacrificed everything for her. When Martha died, Rebecca had collapsed. Couldn't sleep. Ate nothing but dry cereal for weeks. I'd carried her through it. Woke up with her during the night terrors. Held her while she screamed. I missed work, skipped meals, lived on caffeine and grief. And I had promised my wife, sworn to her, that Rebecca would never want for anything. I'd cashed out half my pension for her first house. Bought Troy's first batch of inventory when his drop-shipping startup ran dry. Paid off their student loans with the severance package I got after being laid off at 61. And now I was an obstacle to be removed. A relic to be repositioned. They didn't know I'd found the messages. I didn't touch the iPad again. Didn't delete the emails. I wanted them to think I was still ignorant, still that same dependable fool with a toolbox and a checkbook. But I sat there until the rain turned to sleet, hands folded on the table like I was back in a war room, planning deployment. They wanted me out. Fine. But they should have remembered. I built this family from the ground up. And I kept all the blueprints. The next morning, I made pancakes. Not the kind from a box. Real ones, with buttermilk, vanilla, and a pinch of nutmeg, the way Rebecca used to like them when she was a kid. I even carved a smiley face into Emily's with banana slices and blueberries. She laughed when she saw it, the kind of laugh that feels like forgiveness, even when you haven't earned it. I didn't tell her what I'd found. Children shouldn't carry that kind of weight. Instead, I asked her what she was learning in school and who her favorite teacher was. She told me about a science project involving celery and food dye, and how Troy got mad when she spilled red water on his white rug. She giggled at the memory. He said the house isn't for messes, she added in a whisper, then shrugged. But Mommy rolled her eyes, so I think it was okay. That line sat with me all morning. By noon, Rebecca had arrived to pick her up, not with an apology or even a thanks. Just a tap of her horn and a tight-lipped expression when I opened the door. Can we make this quick, Dad? Troy's got a call in 15. Emily ran out with her backpack bouncing. I hugged her tight, whispered, "Draw me another picture soon," and handed her a sandwich for the ride. She grinned and kissed my cheek before skipping toward the car. Rebecca turned to follow, but I caught her shoulder gently. Got a minute? She hesitated, visibly annoyed. Is it about Thanksgiving again? We've been over this. No, I said softly. Just wanted to ask how things are going. With you. With Troy. Everything all right? She narrowed her eyes, her stance shifting like I'd just asked to borrow money. We're managing, she said. Why? I studied her for a moment. There was a time I could read every shift in her face, every worry she tried to bury. Now she looked like a mask of herself, polished and hard. You left the iPad at my place, I said. Thought you might need it back. She blinked. Her throat bobbed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Oh, she said too quickly. Thanks. I didn't open anything, I lied, but some notifications came through. Rosepine Estates. That for a client or something? A pause. Then that corporate smile. Just helping a colleague. Her dad's transitioning into assisted living, and Troy's walking them through the financials. I nodded slowly. Nice of you to help. She exhaled, already stepping back. Anything else, Dad? I wanted to say 1,000 things. Wanted to ask her how long she'd seen me as a piece of furniture. When exactly did I stop being her father and start being a resource to be repositioned? But I said none of it. Just smiled. Have a good day, sweetheart. She paused at the word, like it sounded foreign now. That afternoon, Troy showed up at my house. I was replacing the screen door hinge, kneeling in the driveway when his shiny black SUV pulled up and idled far too long before he got out. Hey, Frank, he said, voice oily. Rebecca mentioned you might have seen some stuff on the iPad. Thought I'd come clear the air. I didn't look up. Not sure what you mean. Right, he chuckled. Just, in case anything looked weird. You know how legal stuff gets worded. All that, transfer of care language. Scary on paper, harmless in practice. I stood up slowly, dusted off my jeans. You here to scare me, Troy? He blinked. What? No. Of course not. Because I may be old, I said, but I'm not fragile. Troy's smile faltered. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I built homes for 30 years, I continued. Laid every inch of wiring in this place. Raised a daughter while her mother died slow and ugly. Buried men younger than you overseas, and held my tongue longer than most can hold their breath. I stepped closer, just enough to feel his discomfort. So if there's something you're trying to say to me, say it. Otherwise, get off my driveway. His jaw clenched. You don't understand how hard we're working to keep this family stable. I laughed, not out of amusement, but from something brittle and cold. Is that what this is? Stability? He straightened his blazer and stepped back. We're just trying to plan for the future. Then you should have remembered, I said, pointing to the ground beneath us, who paid for this foundation. He left without another word. I watched the SUV disappear down the street, then turned back to my half-hinged screen door. I could have stopped right there. Pretended it was a misunderstanding. Ignored the emails, the forgery, the plans made in hushed tones and polite language. But the truth was clear. They didn't see me as a father anymore. They saw me as inventory. And it was time I reminded them what happens when you try to write off something that's still breathing. I spent the rest of that week in silence. Not out of sadness, I wasn't grieving anymore. I was organizing. There's a kind of discipline you never forget, even decades after you hang up your uniform. I spent 20 years in logistics for the Army, war zones, relief missions, natural disasters. You don't survive those by shouting or rushing. You survive by observing. Tracking. Anticipating. So that's what I did. First, I pulled the financial folder from the old safe in the hallway, the one nobody had opened since Martha died. Inside were files yellowed with age and time, each one labeled in neat block letters, loan agreements, bank statements, property titles, signatures. I sat at the dining table, spreading out papers like blueprints. They'd always assumed I kept no records. Rebecca once joked that I lived in a shoebox with receipts. She wasn't wrong. But those receipts told a story. $32,000 wired to Troy for his second business attempt, Delaney Innovations LLC, a name he came up with on a cocktail napkin. $19,200 toward Emily's private school tuition. $120,000 in equity removed from my home over 6 years to fund their down payment and renovations. $60,000 co-signed business line of credit, active, and tied directly to my retirement fund as collateral. I highlighted every figure. Circled every signature. Notarized. Dated. Documented. Then I called the bank. Spoke with a woman named Michelle in the fraud and dispute department. She listened, asked for digital copies, and after I finished speaking, she said in a low voice, "Mr. Delaney, if even half of what you're saying is true, they're in serious trouble." Next, I contacted my lawyer, Henry Masterson. Vietnam vet, old school, sharp as a bayonet. "Frank," he said after hearing the story, "I knew Troy was a parasite the moment he asked me how to write off his Porsche as a business asset. He drafted a revocation of all powers of attorney, which I signed in triplicate. Then we prepared affidavits showing undue influence and suspected financial exploitation, enough to trigger a civil investigation if needed. After that, I reached out to someone I hadn't called in 12 years, Doug Sandoval, an Army buddy who now worked in private investigations. "You need dirt?" he asked. "Documentation," I replied. "And evidence of forgery. I think my daughter signed things she had no right to." Doug had it within 4 days. Screenshots. Metadata. A recorded Zoom call from 8 months ago where Troy coached Rebecca through signing my name on a revised trust agreement. They even joked about how easy old men are to manipulate if you speak gently enough. I saved the video to 3 USB drives and 1 external hard drive. Put them in different places. You don't work supply chain in Kandahar without learning a thing or two about redundancy. Then came the final step. I called Troy's investors. Just 2 of them. Old names from the tech industry I recognized from LinkedIn and that smug, "Our Team," page on his company site. I introduced myself as Frank Delaney, silent partner, retired contributor, and co-signer of the line of credit. They were confused at first. But when I forwarded them documents showing where their capital had been cross-collateralized with funds borrowed against my retirement, their tone changed. The emails I received back were short, clipped, and tinged with panic. That same afternoon, I went to Rosepine Estates. Not to visit. Just to observe. It was beautiful, in a sterile kind of way. High-end amenities, private chefs, spa days, memory care specialists. The kind of place designed to look like a country club and function like a holding cell. The receptionist greeted me with a clipboard and a smile. "Are you here for a tour?" "No," I said, "I'm here to confirm that I won't be needing one." She blinked, puzzled. "I've heard people come here to disappear," I added. "But I have no intention of disappearing." That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I opened the drawer beside me, the one with Emily's crayon drawings. There it was. A picture she'd drawn 2 weeks ago. It showed a small gray building with sad eyes and a sign that read, "Grandpa's New House." There were bars on the windows. A tiny stick figure sat inside, frowning. Outside, 2 taller stick figures smiled. I turned it over. She'd written, in crooked cursive, "I don't want you to go there." I set it beside my legal documents. It was all the motivation I needed. They had tried to erase me. Now it was my turn to erase them from everything they thought they controlled. 2 days later, Rebecca invited me to brunch. Not dinner. Not a family gathering. Brunch, the polite, controlled meal of people who don't actually want to spend time together. We met at a trendy cafe on the north end of town. The kind with pressed beet juice, $16 avocado toast, and servers who say, of course, to everything. She was already seated when I arrived, scrolling through her phone, half a mimosa drained. No smile. No hug. "Glad you could make it," she said, not looking up. I sat across from her and ordered black coffee. The waitress smiled too wide and wrote it down like it was a sin. Rebecca launched right in. So, Troy and I have been thinking more seriously about your long-term care. There it was. She said it like a weather report. Long-term care. Have you? I replied. We're just concerned, Dad. The house is big. The driveway gets icy. We know you won't say anything, but it's okay to accept help. Help. Like someone laying out a pillow while they rob your pockets. I've been managing fine, I said. Rebecca offered that rehearsed nod she used in meetings. But that's not sustainable. We've been talking to a few people, care coordinators, estate planners. There are excellent places that specialize in dignity and independence. I looked out the window. A group of young professionals laughed at a patio table, wine glasses clinking. I remembered when that was her, fresh out of college, still calling me every Sunday. She set her phone down, suddenly serious. I know you don't want to talk about this, but you've always said family comes first. Letting go of control isn't weakness. It's trust. I almost laughed. Instead, I stirred my coffee. Is this about the house? I asked calmly. You thinking of selling it already? She blinked. What? You've had the real estate agent drive by twice last week. The Lexus with the Keller Williams tag. Her jaw clenched. We're just exploring options. Whose options? She didn't answer. After the food came, her frittata, untouched, she leaned in. We're not trying to hurt you, Dad. We're trying to secure you. The way she said it made me feel like a commodity again. Like a portfolio to be locked down. I appreciate that, I said. I really do. But I'll make my own decisions. Rebecca tilted her head, lips tight. You always think people are trying to take advantage of you. Only when they are, I replied. The silence stretched until she stood, dropped her napkin on the table, and left her half-finished drink behind. That night, Troy called. Not from his cell. From Rebecca's. He thought I wouldn't pick up otherwise. Hey Frank, he started, too chipper. Listen, I know you and Rebecca had a weird talk this morning. I wanted to smooth things over. Go ahead, I said. He paused, clearly not expecting agreement. I just think, there's been a lot of miscommunication. You've always been generous with us, and we want to repay that by making sure you're comfortable. I am comfortable, I said. Well, sure, Troy continued, but we mean long-term comfortable. Financially safe. Structured. There it was again. The vocabulary of ownership. I could hear pages turning in the background. Maybe he was reading from some kind of pitch deck. Just so you know, he added, I spoke to a lawyer who specializes in elder transitions. There are tax advantages if we act now, like before the fiscal quarter closes. And there it was. Not about care. Not about safety. It was about timing. Profits. Benefits. Me, reduced to a line item on their end-of-year report. I see, I said, my voice flat. Think of it this way, he added. We're not pushing you out. We're bringing you into a new phase of life. I hung up before he could say another word. That weekend, I invited Emily over for a fishing trip. We didn't catch anything, but we talked, about school, about a book she was writing, about how sometimes her parents act like everything is a meeting. She said it with a sigh far too old for 11. That night, after she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, I sat by the wood stove and opened an old photo album. One picture stood out. Rebecca, about 10 years old, standing next to Martha. They were holding a homemade sign, Welcome home, Daddy. Letters crooked, hearts drawn in the corners. I'd returned from a 2-month job site in Wyoming. Slept in a trailer. Missed Christmas. Missed her birthday. Came back to that sign and two people who made everything worth it. Now one of them was gone. And the other? She was trying to cash me out like an expired policy. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, staring at the faint glow of the embers. This family had been mine once. But it wasn't mine anymore. And come Monday, they'd find out just how dangerous it is to corner a man who's got nothing left to protect, except his name. The invitation was simple. Sunday dinner. Just the three of us. No Emily. I made pot roast, Rebecca's childhood favorite, and set the table with Martha's old china. The house was warm, smelled like rosemary and onions. Comforting. Disarming. Rebecca and Troy arrived 5 minutes late. Both dressed like they were coming from a casual real estate showing. Troy brought a bottle of wine I couldn't drink. Rebecca didn't notice the clean linens or the place settings. She was already scanning the room like it was being listed. "You've done some rearranging," she said. I hadn't. But I smiled. Thought I'd clear some space. Easier to move around that way. We ate in relative silence, broken by small talk about traffic and Emily's school projects. They were trying to keep things light, but they couldn't help glancing at each other, like actors waiting for their cue. After dessert, store-bought pound cake I passed off as homemade, I cleared the plates and returned to the table with a small stack of papers. "Thought I'd get your opinion on some stuff," I said, sliding the folder between them. Troy's face lit up. Rebecca tensed. Their tells were as loud as sirens. "Oh?" Troy asked, flipping it open. "What are we looking at?" "Just some ideas I've been tossing around. About the house. The accounts. My care, since that seems to be on everyone's mind." They both straightened. "Dad, we didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," Rebecca began, clearly rehearsed. "We're just trying to be proactive." "I appreciate that," I said. "That's why I wanted you here. To walk me through the options." I leaned back, arms folded, watching. Troy took the bait first, flipping through the documents too quickly, then pausing at a sheet marked Power of Attorney Authorization, Draft. "This is good," he said, falsely casual. "Very smart of you to get ahead of things." Rebecca nodded. "Especially with, well, memory concerns." I raised an eyebrow. "You think my memory's slipping?" Troy jumped in. "Just little things. Confusion over dates. Repeating stories. It's not unusual, Frank. Happens to the best of us." "I see." I pointed to a line on the page. "So this clause here, about liquidating properties for safety fund reserves, you'd be comfortable executing that?" "Absolutely," Troy said too fast. "And if I didn't want to sign it today?" Rebecca's mouth opened, but she hesitated. "It would delay things." There are deadlines, Dad. There's a window for certain legal actions." "Ah," I said, nodding. "So this is more for your timeline than mine." "That's not fair," she snapped. "We're doing this for you." "For me," I repeated. "Even if I say no." There was a silence then, the kind that creeps into a room like gas. Troy folded his hands. "Frank, we've been handling so much for so long. The school. The house. The business. We've earned a say." I smiled. "That word again." "What?" "Earned. You think helping me, helping Emily, buying things with my money, means ownership." "No one said that," Rebecca muttered. "You didn't have to." I stood, walked to the sideboard, and retrieved something from the drawer. A small black voice recorder. I clicked it off and laid it on the table. The color drained from Troy's face. Rebecca blinked. "What is that?" "Our conversation," I said. "Tonight. And a few others." "You were recording us?" Troy's voice cracked. I leaned forward. You came into this house with paperwork you planned to use against me. You forged my signature. You filed for a psychiatric evaluation under my name. You listed my house, the one I built, as a liquidation asset in a loan you defaulted on. Rebecca stood up, rattled. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. My voice was calm. Deadly calm. You thought I was slow. Weak. Convenient. You saw what I gave you, and decided it wasn't enough. You built your castle on my back, and now you want to bury me under it. Troy stood too, knocking his chair over. You have no idea what you're doing. I stepped closer. No, you don't. I took out a second folder. This one thicker. Labeled with red tabs. Bank statements. Legal affidavits. Email transcripts. Signed witness reports. All filed. I tapped the folder once. And next week, they become public. Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to the door, like a trapped animal looking for a hole. You wanted to put me in a retirement home? I said. Congratulations. You're going to be visiting one. No one moved. The room held its breath. Now, I added softly, get out of my house. They didn't speak. Didn't argue. They just left. And for the first time in a long time, the house was truly quiet. But it wasn't the quiet of loneliness. It was the quiet of liberation. It began with silence. No phone calls. No texts. Not even a half-hearted apology email. Rebecca and Troy disappeared into quiet, the kind that always follows a storm when people think they've outrun it. But storms don't forget. That Monday morning, I walked into Henry Masterson's office. By the time I left, the first wave had been set in motion. My revocation of all powers of attorney was officially filed and timestamped. The forensic documentation of forged signatures and fraudulent filings had been submitted to both the bank and the district attorney's elder abuse task force. The Department of Real Estate had been alerted about the unauthorized listing attempt on my property. And finally, a civil claim had been filed in Superior Court, naming Troy Delaney and Rebecca Chambers for financial exploitation, forgery, and breach of fiduciary trust. But I wasn't done. That night, I sent 3 emails, each one brief, each one surgical. To Troy's 2 largest investors, including a man named Len Mandelbaum, who'd previously hosted them on a podcast about scaling with family trust. I attached the revised trust documents, forged, along with annotated bank statements showing how funds from my retirement line had been funneled through their LLC to cover personal expenses. To Emily's school board. I didn't accuse Rebecca directly. I just shared my concern, backed by receipts, that her tuition had been funded via misappropriated retirement income, and that I was withdrawing all future payments until the matter was resolved. To Troy's former partner, the one he'd pushed out during his second pivot, forwarding the call recording where he laughed about how old people don't understand what they're signing. The next morning, the headlines wrote themselves. Local startup rocked by fraud allegations, retired veteran cites forged signatures. Family trust betrayed, daughter, son-in-law accused of exploiting aging father. It spread quickly. Troy's company website went offline. His LinkedIn disappeared. Rebecca's firm announced she was taking a voluntary leave of absence, less than 24 hours after the complaint went public. Then came the letters. The mortgage company sent one, notifying me that the joint loan I'd co-signed was now in technical default, due to suspected fraud and contested signatures. The private school sent another, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss financial realignment. Even the Rosepine facility sent one, oddly polite. We understand there may be misunderstandings regarding your application. Please contact us to clarify your intentions. I didn't respond. Instead, I went fishing. Took a chair to the lake. Sat by the water for 3 hours. Let the world spin itself out while I reeled in nothing and liked it. That Friday, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. He handed me a manila envelope, thick with legal filings. Troy and Rebecca's attorney was threatening countersuit, claiming emotional distress and reputational harm. I read the packet carefully. Then I walked it straight to Henry. He smiled like a man who'd been waiting for this. They just handed us the rest of the rope, he said. Now we hang them with it. A week later, my house was quiet again. And then came a knock, softer this time. I opened the door to find Rebecca. No makeup. No trench coat. Hair pulled back like she used to wear it in college. "Dad," she said, voice small. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. She sat at the same table where we'd shared pot roast. Her hands trembled around a coffee cup I placed in front of her. "I was stupid," she said, eyes glassy. "I thought we were doing the right thing. I thought if we managed things before anything happened, we could make it easier." "Easier for whom?" She blinked, tears escaping. "We never meant to hurt you. You forged my name." She winced. That was Troy. He said it would just be temporary. Just to get things rolling. I stayed quiet. Let her fill the silence. "We've lost everything," she said. "The company. The investors. The house is under review. Emily's been crying. She misses you." She drew me a picture, I said, opening the drawer. "Remember?" I handed her the paper. The bars on the windows. The frown on the little stick figure. Rebecca stared at it for a long time. "I was trying to control things," she whispered. "No," I corrected gently. "You were trying to erase me before I got in your way." She nodded, defeated. "What happens now?" she asked. I took a slow sip of coffee, then set the cup down. "What happens now," I said, "is that I live the rest of my life without pretending you're still the little girl who made me signs when I came home from work." She cried. I didn't stop her. When she left, I didn't hug her. Didn't promise forgiveness. Didn't promise anything. The next week, I transferred ownership of my house into a trust. Not in Rebecca's name. Not even in Emily's. I named the trust Martha's Hands, because she built this life with me, and she was the only one who never asked for more than what we had. And then I moved. Not into a facility. Into a small cabin upstate, on land I bought years ago but never used. I rebuilt the porch. Fixed the fence. Strung up a line for drying clothes like Martha used to do. Emily visits now, supervised, but often. She helps me plant beans. Tells me stories. Draws pictures without bars on the windows. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I hear Martha's voice in the trees. "You kept your promise," it says. And I whisper back, "They tried to take everything, but I never let go of that." It was dusk when Troy showed up. Uninvited. Alone. I saw the headlights before I heard the knock, that same black SUV with dealer plates, engine idling like it couldn't wait to escape. The knock wasn't polite. It was a pounding, angry rhythm. I opened the door slowly, hand behind my back, where a crowbar hung from a hook beside the coat rack. Troy stood there, soaked in sweat despite the chill. Shirt half untucked, eyes bloodshot. "We need to talk," he said. I didn't move. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything overnight?" "Something like that," I replied. He stepped forward, but I held my ground. "You think you're the victim here," he said, voice rising. "You signed that money over years ago. Rebecca and I built a life. You were just the springboard. Now you're dragging us through hell because you can't handle getting old." "Step back," I said calmly. He didn't. He laughed, bitter and cornered. Rebecca's a wreck. Emily's scared. She keeps asking why her grandpa won't call her. You want to talk about betrayal? Look in the mirror. That last part cut deep. He knew it would. But I didn't flinch. You know what Emily told me? I said, stepping out onto the porch with him. She said you made her clean up spilled juice with paper towels because maids don't live here. She said she's afraid of your voice when you drink. That she pretends to be asleep to avoid you. He blinked, caught off guard. You're lying. No, I said. I'm listening. He clenched his jaw, fists curling. Let me see her, he barked. You want to punish us, fine. But don't you dare turn her against me. I nodded slowly. Then said, you're not getting near that child again. She's my daughter. She's a scared little girl who needs protection. And you? You're a man who threatened her stability for your own gain. You tried to destroy the one place she felt safe, and you would've, if I hadn't found those emails. Troy stepped closer. I stepped aside. He took one step into the doorway, just one, before I slammed the crowbar down on the floor between us, inches from his toes. The sound cracked like a gunshot. He froze. My eyes met his. Steady. Unblinking. I survived roadside bombs, lung cancer, and a broken heart, I said. If you think I won't survive you, you're stupider than I thought. He didn't speak. I didn't need him to. He turned around slowly and walked back to his SUV. This time, he didn't peel out. Just drove off into the dark, swallowed by his own silence. I watched until the taillights vanished. Then I closed the door. Locked it twice. Walked to the guest room where Emily's blanket still lay folded on the bed. I picked it up. Held it tight. And whispered a promise into the quiet. You'll always be safe with me. 3 months later, the cabin smelled like cedar and soap. I'd refinished the wood floors by hand, just like I used to in my younger days. It hurt more now, every joint ached, every splinter stayed longer, but there was something honest in the pain. Something pure. I spent my mornings chopping wood and my evenings feeding blue jays off the windowsill. The lake was glassy most days, a mirror to the sky. No sirens. No emails. No knocks I wasn't expecting. Emily visited twice a month. Court approved. Quietly arranged by a guardian ad litem I'd contacted after filing the initial fraud complaint. I didn't press for custody, I knew the system wouldn't give it. But I made sure they'd keep an eye on her parents, at least for a while. She brought her notebooks when she came, pages filled with stories about heroes who don't wear capes, just tool belts and plaid shirts. She told me I was her blueprint grandpa, the one she'd build her future on. Rebecca never wrote again. I'd received one letter after the fallout, handwritten, filled with guilt, excuses, and half-promises of growth. I read it once, then buried it under the firewood pile. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done giving her rent-free space in the home of my mind. Troy, from what I heard, was trying to freelance as a business consultant. Last I saw, his company's domain had been seized by creditors. And the Boulder house? Repossessed. Some would say I lost a daughter. But I see it differently. I lost the illusion of one, and in doing so, found the truth of who I still was. Not a burden. Not a blank check. Not a footnote in someone else's success story. I was the man who built the house, laid the pipes, paid the bills, held the family together longer than it deserved. And when the time came, I was also the man who lit the match to protect the only thing left worth saving. Not for vengeance. Not for pride. But for legacy, the kind that doesn't fit on paper, or in trust documents or business plans. The kind that fits in a child's drawing. Folded. Taped to the fridge. And framed forever in the heart.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.